Hi everyone, my name is Milena Bojovic. I'm a PhD candidate at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia in the Department of Geography and Planning. My broad research interests are around food system change, global environmental change, and just food transitions, and the focus of my lightning talk today is the rise of synthetic milk and the future of dairy. So just for context, my research case study for my thesis is the dairy industry in Aotearoa, New Zealand. This is a picture I took on field work a few years ago, and there are significant environmental and social issues around dairy intensification in New Zealand. Some of these are the massive increase in dairy numbers from 3.4 million in 1990 to 6.3 million in 2019. This is because there is a significant export industry here. 95% of New Zealand dairy is exported to over 130 countries with major buyers such as Nestle. This case study is really great for me to think about food system change on both a local and global scale because New Zealand dairy is so embedded within the global food system. So just for a bit more context, New Zealand dairy has a significant impact on the agricultural emissions profile of the country. Almost 50% of the nation's emissions come from agriculture and almost a quarter of those coming from dairy. Because it is a pasture-based system, there are significant impacts on waterways due to nitrogen fertilizer runoff and nitrogen levels in the water. So with that being said, this led me to my first publication, which sets out the broader context in which this dairy system operates. So I did a review of the mega trends of the global dairy sector and reflected on the socio-ecological implications. The key findings: shifting geographies and scales of production and consumption, particularly from the global north to the global south, intensification of capital, land, and animals, growing awareness of the ecological impacts of dairy, and of course, alternative milk disruptions, both in the form of plant-based and synthetic milks. So thinking about alternative milk disruptions, this is an excellent map that's been developed by an organization called Ket Maps. As we can see from the perspective of plant-based milk, there have been many new companies that have emerged in recent time that are creating plant-based milks, cheeses, yogurts, frozen desserts. And in particular, I want to highlight the increase in cell-based consumer goods, particularly for dairy. There are some companies here that are based in the US that are pioneering the way forward, thinking of Perfect Day and New Culture in particular. So these companies are using the technology of precision fermentation. This technology has existed prior to the concept of synthetic dairy, but it's now that this technology is being applied in the dairy space. So basically what scientists are doing in the labs is creating the identical protein that is found in traditional dairy milk. So it's basically milk without the cow. This synthetic protein is then mixed with water and other additives so it can be made into a full milk product or also as an ingredient, as a milk powder ingredient. I visited a synthetic milk lab in New Zealand when I was on fieldwork, and I got a crash course in how this works. And one of the opportunities and challenges in this space is the upscaling of this technology and having it upscaled to all different types of products and markets. So I recently wrote a publication for the conversation, and some things I want to highlight from that are Perfect Day in the US pioneering the way forward, already having products to market. In Australia, startup companies like Eden Brew and established companies like Allgee Foods are investing millions of dollars in this technology. So this is a signal that there is real potential here. And in New Zealand, dairy cooperative Fonterra recently announced joint ventures to commercialize fermentation-derived proteins. This is significant because we're seeing traditional large dairy players buying into these new technologies and food systems. I also was recently quoted in The Guardian, so some things I also highlight are that there are parallels between the upscaling of synthetic fabrics and now what we're seeing in synthetic milk. So synthetic fabrics had an impact on existing farming systems, but farmers adapted and they've innovated. So I'm thinking perhaps this is something that might happen in the future of dairy. In the ingredient space, which is something I'll highlight in the next slide, there's potential for synthetic milk to be used as a milk solid. Traditional dairy is already so technologically mitigated, so the fears of synthetic protein are somewhat unfounded in my perspective because there's so much technology involved in traditional dairy production, and the most impacted players in this new form of food is likely to be small-scale dairy producers. So as an example, this coffee creamer, cow's milk isn't even the first, second, or third ingredient in the product. As we can see, cow's milk protein comes about fourth in the list of products. And to that, I say, what other kind of similar products could you think of that this synthetic milk powder could be added to in the future of food? So just to summarize some of the key things that come out in my research, I'm identifying de-intensification, diversification, and the upscaling of dairy alternatives for the future of these systems.